Welcome to The Behavior Code, the podcast that decodes the why behind what we do. I'm your host, Maria.
And I'm Gabriel. We're so glad you're here. Today, we are diving deep into a topic that so many people struggle with, often in silence.
We are, and we're not going to waste any time, so let's just get right into it. If you keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, it's not random, it's not bad luck, and it's not because all the good ones are taken.
That's a pattern shock right there. But it's true. This is a pattern. It's a subconscious script that you're running. And the craziest part is, you're probably not even aware of it.
Exactly. It feels like you're just meeting the wrong people over and over again. But there's a reason your internal radar is tuned to that specific frequency. And we promise you this, by the end of this episode, you will understand the why behind this painful pattern. And more importantly, you'll have the first keys to finally breaking it. And that's the real kicker. It's a blind spot. You could be the most successful, self-aware person in every other area of your life. Your career, your friendships, your health. But when it comes to romantic attraction, it's like a different person is at the controls, one who seems determined to crash the plane. And that's what's so frustrating. It's like you're a moth drawn to a flame and you keep getting burned, but you can't seem to change your flight path. You might even consciously know what you want, a stable, loving, available partner, but your actions, your attractions, lead you somewhere else entirely. And we're not just talking about romantic relationships, though that's a big one. This pattern can show up in friendships, in professional dynamics, anywhere where you find yourself working overtime for someone else's attention or approval.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. The pattern recognition phase. Maria, what does emotionally unavailable even mean? It gets thrown around a lot. That's a bold promise, Maria, but it's an important one because feeling stuck in this cycle is incredibly demoralizing. It can make you question your own judgment, your own desirability. You start to think, maybe there's something wrong with me. It's a term that gets used as a catch-all, sometimes unfairly. People will say, oh, he's just emotionally unavailable, when maybe he's just not that into them. But we're talking about a specific, repeatable pattern of behavior, right?
It really does, and it can be subtle. It's not always someone who explicitly says, I don't want a relationship. Often, it's the person who showers you with affection one day and then pulls away completely the next. That inconsistency is a huge red flag. Exactly, it's a defense mechanism. The person who is truly emotionally unavailable often has their own history of trauma or attachment wounds. Their fear of intimacy, of being engulfed or controlled, is so strong that they keep everyone at an arm's length. The wall, you feel, is a fortress they've built around their heart, and their unavailability is the moat. They might not even be conscious of it, but their behavior is designed to prevent a genuine connection from ever taking root.
Inconsistent affection, that's a big one. It's also about emotional distance, like you can be sitting right next to them, but you feel miles apart. They don't let you in. They avoid deep conversations, especially about feelings or the future.
Right, avoidance of vulnerability. You might share something deeply personal and they'll crack a joke or change the subject or just give you a blank stare. There's a wall up and you can feel it even if you can't quite put your finger on it.
So if we know these people make us feel anxious and confused, why do we keep choosing them? That's the million-dollar question.
And the answer is often surprisingly simple, but hard to accept. It's because, on some deep level, it feels familiar. This is the concept we have to get our heads around. Familiarity feels like chemistry. That's a defense mechanism, a way of managing their own internal world. But for the person on the receiving end, it's just confusing, and it triggers that chase instinct. It's like a puzzle you feel compelled to solve. If I just say the right thing or do the right thing, I can unlock them.
Yeah, familiarity feels like chemistry. So you're saying if you grew up with a certain kind of emotional climate, let's say, one where love was conditional or a parent was distant, that feeling of longing, of trying to win someone over, that feels like home.
It feels like home. So when you meet a new person who gives you that same feeling, that same push and pull, that same uncertainty, Your brain doesn't scream danger. It whispers, ooh, chemistry.
Right. You mistake the anxiety and the butterflies, which are really your nervous system saying this feels like that painful thing from before, for genuine romantic sparks. It's a profound misinterpretation.
And this really brings us to the core mechanism behind all of this, which is attachment theory.
Yes, let's simplify it because it can sound academic, but it's so practical. Essentially, based on our earliest relationships, we develop a style of attaching to others. For this conversation, two styles are key: anxious and avoidant.
So, the anxious attacher. This is often the person who feels they are too much. They crave closeness, they need a lot of reassurance, and they're terrified of abandonment. When their partner pulls away, their anxiety skyrockets, and they try to close the gap. Usually by, texting more, calling, seeking connection. They pursue.
The pursuer. And then you have the avoidant attacher. This is your classic emotionally unavailable person. They equate intimacy with a loss of independence. They feel suffocated by too much closeness. So when their partner gets too close, their instinct is to
Pull away, create distance. And let's be clear, this isn't a conscious choice. The anxious attacher isn't thinking, my goal today is to pursue someone who will ultimately reject me. It's a primal, panic-driven response. Their internal alarm system is screaming, the connection is threatened, do something, anything. And that anything is usually behavior that, ironically, pushes the avoidant person further away. And it's so important to have compassion for yourself if you identify with the anxious attachment style. It doesn't mean you're needy or crazy. It means you're highly attuned to disconnection. Your internal alarm system is just calibrated very, very sensitively because in your past, connection was precarious. You learned that you had to be hyper-vigilant to keep love close.
And it's so important to understand that these attachment styles exist on a spectrum. You might be mostly secure but have anxious tendencies when you feel a relationship is threatened. Or someone might be generally avoidant but capable of connection under the right circumstances. It's not a life sentence, but it is a default setting, and it's so important to understand that these attachment styles exist on a spectrum. You might be mostly secure but have anxious tendencies when you feel a relationship is threatened. Or someone might be generally avoidant but capable of connection under the right circumstances. It's not a life sentence, but it is a default setting.
And it's important to see both sides without judgment. The avoidant person isn't a villain. Their need for space is just as much a survival mechanism as the anxious person's need for closeness. For them, intimacy has felt unsafe or suffocating in the past, so their retreat is a misguided form of self-protection. They're not trying to be cruel. They're trying to breathe.
Exactly. They withdraw. They need space. And here's the kicker. These two are drawn to each other like magnets.
And it's important to see both sides without judgment. The avoidant person isn't a villain. Their need for space is just as much a survival mechanism as the anxious person's need for closeness. For them, intimacy has felt unsafe or suffocating in the past, so their retreat is a misguided form of self-protection. They're not trying to be cruel. They're trying to breathe.
Exactly. They withdraw. They need space. And here's the kicker. These two are drawn to each other like magnets.
Right. And on the flip side, the avoidant person isn't a villain. From their perspective, the anxious person's need for constant reassurance feels like a threat to their autonomy. They feel pressured, so they create space in the only way they know how, by pulling away, shutting down, or focusing on other things like work or hobbies. It's a misguided attempt at self-preservation. It's the classic push-pull dynamic. The anxious person pursues, which makes the avoidant person retreat. The retreat then triggers the anxious person's abandonment fears, so they pursue even harder.
Which makes the avoidant person retreat even further. It's a self-perpetuating cycle, and it creates this incredible intensity.
Right. The highs are so high because the connection feels scarce, and the lows are so devastating. And that roller coaster of emotion, it's so easily mistaken for deep, passionate love, for a soulmate connection. But it's not love. It's the friction of two opposing attachment styles activating each other's deepest wounds. And it's so seductive because it feels like a challenge, not a dysfunction. The anxious pursuer thinks, I can be the one to get through to them. I can be the exception. It validates a deep-seated belief that they have to earn love, that love isn't something that's given freely, but something you have to achieve. And it's so seductive because it feels like a challenge, not a dysfunction. The anxious pursuer thinks, I can be the one to get through to them. I can be the exception. It validates a deep-seated belief that they have to earn love, that love isn't something that's given freely, but something you have to achieve. And it's so seductive because it feels like a challenge, not a dysfunction. The anxious pursuer thinks, I can be the one to get through to them. I can be the exception. It validates a deep-seated belief that they have to earn love, that love isn't something that's given freely, but something you have to achieve. And it's so seductive because it feels like a challenge, not a dysfunction. The anxious pursuer thinks, I can be the one to get through to them. I can be the exception. It validates a deep-seated belief that they have to earn love, that love isn't something that's given freely, but something you have to achieve. And it's so seductive because it feels like a challenge, not a dysfunction.
Activating each other's deepest wounds. Wow. And those wounds, they're almost always formed in our childhood programming. This isn't about blaming parents, but about understanding how our emotional templates are created.
Absolutely. Think about it. If you had a caregiver who was inconsistent with their love, maybe due to their own stress or issues, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, you learn that love is something you have to work for, that it's unpredictable. And it's crucial to do this with self-compassion. The goal is not to shame your past self for having these templates. Your young brain did the best it could to make sense of the world with the tools it had. The goal now, as an adult, is to recognize that those old tools are no longer serving you and to consciously build a new toolkit. And it's crucial to do this with self-compassion. The goal is not to shame your past self for having these templates. Your young brain did the best it could to make sense of the world with the tools it had. The goal now, as an adult, is to recognize that those old tools are no longer serving you and to consciously build a new toolkit.
That's such a vital point. The work isn't about excavation for the sake of it. It's about understanding the blueprint so you can draw a new one. Your past created the map, but you, the adult, are holding the pen. You get to decide whether to keep tracing the same old routes or to chart a new course. Or if you had an emotionally distant caregiver, someone who provided for your physical needs but couldn't connect on an emotional level, you'll learn that love is, well, quiet and maybe even a little lonely. You learn not to expect your emotional needs to be met.
Yes, and our brains are wired for survival, and survival means seeking out what's familiar. It doesn't distinguish between a familiar good feeling and a familiar bad feeling. It just recognizes, I know this, I've survived this before.
So the brain is actively seeking out these familiar emotional environments in our adult partners because it's trying to resolve the original story. It's like, this time I'll get the distant person to love me. This time I'll finally earn the inconsistent person's approval. It's a subconscious attempt to heal an old wound.
And that's where the chaos comes in. The constant guessing, the anxiety, the hope and disappointment, it creates so much internal turmoil. And here's the line I want everyone to remember. Your nervous system mistakes chaos for love.
Let that sink in. Your nervous system mistakes chaos for love. It's not love, it's dysregulation. But it feels so potent, so alive compared to the alternative, which leads us perfectly into the chemistry illusion. Let's get really specific about this. When we say chaos, we mean the feeling of your phone being a source of either intense relief or crushing disappointment. It's checking their social media to see if they've been active. It's rereading texts to decipher their hidden meaning. It's that knot in your stomach that you learn to interpret as excitement. That is your nervous system in a state of high alert, and it is absolutely exhausting. But because it's so consuming, we mistake that intensity for importance. We think, if I'm feeling this much, it must be love.
The chemistry illusion. Why do these unavailable people feel so intoxicatingly attractive? It's brain chemistry, literally. Uncertainty is one of the most powerful triggers for dopamine release.
Right. A casino slot machine isn't addictive because you win every time. It's addictive because you might win. That's the hook.
Exactly. Will they text back? Do they like me? Are they going to pull away again? Every time you get a crumb of affection after a period of distance, your brain gets a huge dopamine hit. It's a reward for waiting.
It's called intermittent reinforcement, and it's the most powerful behavioral conditioning schedule there is. It's literally an addiction loop. Your brain becomes addicted to the cycle of emotional inconsistency.
So, what happens when someone who is genuinely, securely available comes along? Someone who texts back consistently, who is clear about their feelings, who wants to see you regularly. And it's a very real addiction. Functionally, the brain of someone caught in this cycle looks a lot like the brain of a gambling addict. You're pulling the lever on the slot machine, hoping for a jackpot of affection that rarely comes. But the few times it does, the reward feels so huge that it keeps you hooked, pouring more and more of your emotional currency into a machine that's designed to take it.
To a nervous system that's wired for chaos that feels, and that word boring is so loaded, we associate it with a lack of passion, a lack of excitement. But in this context, boring actually means predictable. It means safe. It means the absence of chaos. And when your nervous system has only ever known chaos, safety feels unnervingly quiet. It's like someone who has lived next to a loud train track their whole life suddenly moving to the quiet countryside. The silence is deafening at first.
Boring.
Boring. There's no drama. There's no chase. There's no intermittent reinforcement, so you don't get those dopamine spikes. Your brain says, wait, there's no spark here, no chemistry.
And that feeling of boring is actually a sign of health. It's your nervous system in its calm, regulated state, which is the state you're in when you feel safe and content. But if your template for love is chaos, calm will feel unnerving at first. You'll think something must be wrong, it's too quiet. You have to retrain yourself to see that quiet not as an absence of passion, but as the presence of peace. And you might walk away from a genuinely healthy, loving connection because it doesn't give you the hit your system has grown accustomed to. You've been trained to see calm as boring, and that's a tragedy.
And that's the real tragedy of this pattern. It's not just about having your heart broken, it's about how it erodes your sense of self-worth. You start to internalize their unavailability and think it's a reflection of your own value. If I were just better, prettier, smarter, more interesting, then they would choose me. You're constantly auditioning for a role that was never going to be cast. And it feels tragic because it's a form of self-sabotage. You're rejecting the very thing you claim to want. I've seen people do this. They'll meet a wonderful, kind, stable person and call them too nice. They'll say, there's just no spark. But what they're really saying is, this person doesn't activate my anxiety, and my nervous system doesn't know what to do with that. They've come to associate the feeling of being regulated and safe with being bored. It really is, and it's not just about who we pick, it's about what we do once we've picked them. We have to talk about how we unknowingly reinforce the very pattern we claim to hate. And it's not just a tragedy, it's a profound form of self-sabotage, because you become the gatekeeper of your own loneliness. You might crave a deep, secure connection more than anything, but your own programming rejects the very people who could offer it to you. It's like being allergic to the medicine you need.
Oh, this part is so crucial because it's where we get our power back. So let's talk behaviors. Chasing. And we do this because on a subconscious level, our self-worth gets tangled up in their validation. If we can just get this distant, inconsistent person to finally choose us, it feels like we've won the emotional lottery. It's a distorted way of trying to prove to ourselves that we are in fact worthy of love. But we're seeking that validation from a source that is by definition unable to provide it consistently.
Chasing, yes. When they pull away, you double down. You initiate all the texts, make all the plans, do all the emotional work. You're trying to prove your worth, to convince them to choose you. But all it does is reinforce their avoidant behavior. They learn that they can retreat and you'll just try harder.
And then there's overgiving. You pour all your time, energy, and resources into them. You become their therapist, their cheerleader, their project manager, hoping that if you just give enough, they'll finally see your value and commit.
But it backfires. It creates an imbalance and allows them to remain passive and, frankly, unavailable. Another big one is ignoring early red flags.
Oh, we're so good at this. They say, I'm not looking for anything serious, and we hear, I'm not looking for anything serious yet, but you can change me. We see the flickering candle and imagine a bonfire.
That's it, exactly. You're confusing a person's potential with their reality. You fall in love with who they could be if only they'd heal or change or realize how great you are. But you're not dating their potential, you're dating who they are right now. And right now, they are unavailable.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem in pretty brutal detail. Let's pivot. Let's talk about solutions. How do we start breaking the pattern? Another way we reinforce this is by making excuses for their behavior. They don't text for 3 days, and we tell ourselves, oh, they must be really busy at work. They cancel a date at the last minute, and we say, well, something important must have come up. We create an entire narrative to justify their inconsistency because the alternative, that they're just not that invested, is too painful to face.
Okay, the first step, and it sounds cliche, but it is the absolute foundation, is awareness. Everything we've just talked about, you have to see it in your own life. You have to admit, this is a pattern for me. No more blaming luck. Precisely. You become a storyteller, an author of fiction, really. You're writing a much more romantic and palatable version of the story than what is actually happening. Admitting they're not prioritizing me is a blow to the ego. It's much easier to tell yourself a story where you are the patient, understanding hero in a complex romance rather than a hopeful participant in a one-sided dynamic.
You cannot change what you do not acknowledge. So awareness is number one. Number two, you must stop romanticizing inconsistency. The next time you feel that anxious spark with someone who is hot and cold, I want you to pause, and instead of calling it chemistry, call it what it is, a warning sign.
Yeah, reframe that feeling. Tell yourself, this isn't passion, this is my attachment wound being activated. That simple relabeling can be incredibly powerful.
So true. The next step is to actively start learning the signals of emotional availability. What does it look like? Well, it's consistency, it's clear communication, it's someone who talks about their feelings without shutting down. It's someone who matches your effort. And it's not just about romantic partners. This awareness applies to friendships, to family dynamics, even to how you interact with your boss. Once you start seeing the pattern in one area of your life, it's like a pair of glasses that brings everything into focus. You start noticing all the ways you abandon your own needs to accommodate someone else's inconsistency.
And you have to embrace a new mantra. Slow attraction is better than intense attraction. That instant fireworks, can't eat, can't sleep feeling is often a sign of trauma bonding, not healthy connection. A slow burn where attraction and trust build over time, that's the goal.
I love that. Slow attraction over intense attraction. It's about letting go of the Hollywood ideal of love and embracing what actually works for our nervous systems long term. Which brings us to the final piece, reprogramming love.
This is the work. It's about teaching your body what healthy feels like. Healthy attraction feels calm. It feels safe. It feels secure. It doesn't mean it's boring. It just means your nervous system isn't in a constant state of fight or flight. There's a peacefulness to it.
So, how do we retrain the nervous system? You have to give it new experiences. That means when you meet someone who is consistent and available and your brain screams boring, you don't run. You stay. You go on a second date, a third. You give the slow burn a chance to catch fire.
You teach your body through experience that calm is safe, that consistency is love. And you also do the inner work. You learn to give yourself the validation and security you are always seeking from others. You become your own secure base.
When you do that, you stop looking for someone to complete you and start looking for someone to complement you. The desperation fades. You start choosing from a place of wholeness, not from a place of lack. And that changes everything.
It really does. It's a journey for sure. It's not a quick fix, but it starts with the awareness that you're in the pattern and a decision that you deserve better. We have to end with this truth. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you tolerate until you change the pattern.
That's the perfect place to end. Change the pattern, change your life. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Behavior Code.
Join us next time as we continue to decode the hidden scripts that run our lives. Until then, be kind to yourself.